Okay, Start Campus and EDP fairly recently ago have announced a strategic partnership in terms of accelerating renewable powered data centers in Portugal. Just be good to start with perhaps the core vision behind the collaboration, and is there a particular significance in the time, or just you've been discussing this and now you've come around to it, or was there anything that triggered it being brought to the market at this time?
No, I think nothing specific. Obviously, I guess the progress we're making at the Sines data campus is triggering a lot of further thinking in Portugal. And obviously not just us, there's also, you would have read maybe more entrants and more planning for the market, which we see as good. We feel more the merrier, and it just positions Portugal as this new hub within Iberia, as a wider alternative now to the tier one markets and to Scandinavia, which we feel is now getting a good head of steam. So I think us now launching officially, for a year now, Sino 1, the first building, which is at 33 megawatts and full. So N-Scale, Microsoft, and with the NVIDIA chips is what we announced. So they've taken the whole of the first building, or most, let's say, a large chunk of the first building. There are other customers that we can't announce, but that has triggered obviously now Sino 2 planning, which we haven't. We sort of started the pre-works, but that's going to be a 200 megawatt building. And there's going to be another 200 megawatts after that. So I say all this because that's sort of what's making EDP as the main power provider in the country to think about this, and that really drove, I think, this agreement, which still is at a high level, but there'll be a lot of more meat to the bone, let's say, in the coming months. But as we said in the release, there's sort of three areas, which is additional renewable power to the grid, which I think is very important for us, because we're keen to work with EDP to add more renewables, so we use that rather than the existing renewables which the country needs. So that's we're going to get to 1.2 gigawatts on the site, so that's a fair chunk of power. So that's very keen for us. So they'll be our primary renewable provider. So that's key part of the partnership. Two is investigating how we add that renewable capacity. So what can we do to assist? And as you probably, maybe you're aware or maybe not, but it's a shared grid in Portugal with Spain. Similar to EU has a lot of interconnectivity between grids, but in Iberia especially, it's a interconnected grid. So renewables come from Spain and Portugal gets renewables back. And Portugal, I think it's dropped to about 69-70%, but a year ago it was like 84% renewable on the national grid, which is crazy, which is also part of the reason we chose Portugal. And then the other piece, a bit of a long-winded answer, is new sites. So EDP own a lot of power stations and decommissioning power stations within Iberia, so Portugal and Spain, but also in other countries such as North America. So EDP have a lot of sites, and we're going to look at what makes sense for the future, and where can we do similar sites, maybe growing from what we've done in Sines.
And presumably the intention is to ensure and or improve the grid resilience that you'll be relying on. So the question would be, I guess, how clearly there's rapidly growing energy demands. You've explained there how much you're going to need. So you've got to cater for that and also maintain system stability. So how should I put this? Are you optimistic or happy that it's all going to happen, or are you slightly worried that there might be a disjoint at some stage? Just your thoughts, I suppose, as to that huge expansion in energy required and how that will be provided in a timely fashion.
Yeah, no, we're very confident. So part of the value of our site, and our customers say this, which we're very happy with, is if you look at Europe, well, there's nothing of this scale, this advanced in Europe. So that's something to say. That there's certainly other projects that are planning a gigawatt plus, even in the UK, I think north of England, but within Europe. but they're all still in the planning phase, let's say, right? They may have the land, but we've finished the first building, and as I said, hopefully start actually groundbreaking very soon on the second building. So the reason we can do that is because we have an agreement that the 1.2 gigawatts is ours. So that gives us huge confidence, and we have no issues with that. I think what EDP is doing with this agreement with us, and also if you read some of the other stuff that the government's talking about now with the data center roadmap, is they're actually looking at how they support additional gigawatts, not just from us, but the other people interested. So Portugal actually wants to capture more, and they want to do that in a way which is sustainable and doesn't impact the national grid. So we have a lot of confidence when we look at the planning and what they're thinking about, and also this interconnectivity with Spain within the EU framework is very valuable. So they do share power between the two, and I think that gives a certain buffer to planning. But I think Portugal, in its own right, just with the renewable mix they have, the dams, the hydropower, they're blessed with a lot of rivers. They're also, which is really interesting, is they're blessed with a lot of hydro dams, which obviously you can't build more within time. It takes years to build a new hydro dam, but the ones they have mean they can actually shift inertia in the power system, which means they can shift availability of power very quickly. So they can pull from the grid and give back to the grid with renewable, which isn't always possible with solar, as you know, because of the nature of solar. But hydro gives you that ability, which is quite impressive. So, and they've got different new projects around solar and wind, and additional hydro, which gives us confidence that for our own campus, but also potential expansion, which we're also looking at in Portugal as well.
Do you think? I mean, you explained there that in Portugal, in terms of adding the extra capacity, you're ahead of sort of other countries. So do you think Portugal will be a competitive advantage moving forward to see Portugal get, I won't say more than its fair share, but at least, attract more investment, whereas other countries, regions might not, because they're not so far advanced when it comes to providing this extra energy infrastructure?
Yeah, I think already with ourselves, it's got let's say more than its fair share, but I think they can definitely get more. So they're already applying for the gigafactory, which is now a joint bid actually with Spain, which is quite clever, sort of an Iberian bid, and we're a reference site for that. And it may or may not land in Sines on our campus. We'll see if they win that application. But no, I think yes, they can win more and get more. And I think it is a sign. I would say again, it's a sign of Iberia coming up as a region where the traditional tier ones, London, Frankfurt, Paris, Amsterdam, the powerhouses really. You've got to understand obviously that Portugal and even Spain is coming up still, but it's next to the installed gigawatts in London or Paris or Amsterdam. It's still far off because there's such historical finance centers and data center centers. But moving forward, the shift has started with Scandinavia a number of years back, and it looks like two alternatives now appearing, which is Scandinavia and Iberia. For the reasons we discussed, renewable access, really good connectivity. Portugal's connected to every continent with subsea cables, the only country I think that can say that. And also the power costs. Despite being renewable, it's very competitive. It's actually, only a few cents more than some of the Scandinavian countries. Yeah. So when you look at Scandinavian countries versus Portugal, let's say specifically, the power cost is comparable. So I wouldn't say it's as cheap as some of the very effective Scandinavian countries for various reasons how they get their power, but it's much more competitive than some of the traditional tier one markets in terms of power of energy, which is very key for custom tech customers that look for these sites. And then the only other thing I would add, Philip, is if you look at our campus and also campuses of this size, we're really AI focused. By that I mean it's large workloads that are not necessarily location sensitive. So by that, I mean, they don't necessarily need to be close to a London, Paris, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, or even close to a Lisbon. So we're an hour and a half south of Lisbon. It doesn't matter because they just want to put the workloads there. They want to put the GPUs, very energy hungry, and they just want to train them efficiently so efficiently and cost effectively.
Yeah, and to that point, I know one of the key aspects you stress of the memorandum of understanding is the fact that EDP is going to be a preferred long-term green energy partner for yourself. And just how important is that in terms of long-term energy alignment for hyperscale and, as you mentioned, their AI-driven data center deployments? What sort of comfort, I suppose, does the relationship give you?
Yeah, I mean, it's hugely important, and it's now, I would say, critical when you speak with the customers that that are training their models. They want to know where your energy is coming from, because they have to declare that to their own shareholders and also their consumers, right? Who are asking those questions. You would see a lot in North America around the impact of data centers on communities, energy and water, and then jobs. Those are usually the three big points. So hugely important. And so for us, for EDP to be so focused on renewables is absolutely key. Thankfully, with our campus, with the seawater cooling, our water usage is also going to be zero. So we're using the seawater within the temperature guidelines, which means we don't have to use fresh water or drinking water for the cooling. So this all ties together in terms of that working with EDP as such a key renewable partner for the campus as we ramp up to 1.2 gigawatts in the coming years.
So grid resilience, price stability, major concerns, and the partnership, I think, is presumably going to help ensure predictable, sustainable energy supply for future digital infrastructure projects. Is that another important aspect of why you've done the memorandum of understanding?
Yes, yeah, hugely. So as I said, the key point I think we tried to bring out when announcing this is it's additional renewable capacity to the grid. That was key for us. So by that we mean EDP and the Portuguese government has its own planning for its population, its consumer base, and then it has planning for manufacturing and industrial, which we would drop into. So what we're keen on this is what it gives us is to be really part of that planning for what is the additional renewable capacity that we need, which they know from our power, the campus's power pool, but also what projects are they planning and how can we assist there, really? Which renewable projects will give that additional capacity? And then tied to your second point, what that does mean, additional capacity means we can ensure there's no price impact to the consumer, which is key on the community front. We're building this massive campus in Portugal. It's a huge win for Portugal. We constantly make that point that you're not just a AI transit, but you become an AI hub in Europe, in the EU, which is key. But that can't happen at the detriment of the community. Kind of power prices go through the roof for the population. So that's what this partnership allows us to do, is look at that additional power renewable capacity, and also gives us confidence that EDP and the government is ensuring that the prices stable, or they rise as you would expect, rather than astronomically. So that's a very good second point you made, and that's part of that as well.
And maybe the final piece of the jigsaw is the financial backing. I think it's Davidson Kempner invested, and perhaps you want to say a little bit about just how critical is that long-term capital and investment discipline, particularly when we're talking about scaling large digital infrastructure platforms.
Yeah, very key. So we've got two investors really. The primary is Davidson Kempner, which is a large US-based hedge fund, one of the top 10 hedge funds, and they invest in a lot of projects. And then Pioneer Point, actually, which is from the UK. And they're also sort of the operating investor, operating partner. So those are the two pools of the investment, but it's very key. So if you look at the campus, Philip, when we finish, now we're giving a range these days, but it's somewhere between $8.5 to $10 billion. So that's the total amount that will be invested in the campus, which by far will be the largest private sector investment in Portugal's history. And this doesn't count the infrastructure investment. So when we give that number, when we did the opening, the US Embassy, given its American investment and with N-Scale for Microsoft, also an American end user tech company, they did make the point that actually when you look at the infrastructure investment, you're talking $30 to $40 billion. And that the reasons they say that is because we're talking about the building costs. and the power, the cooling and the power technology, they're adding into that the chips and the servers, which takes you up to 40 billion dollars worth of investment. So financing in this sector is becoming more and more key to make the system work. So yeah, having long-term backers is very, very important. And when you're planning this size, which again, to reiterate, this size hasn't been done in Europe. So it's not just a technical challenge, but also a financing task to get these projects done when you're talking 200 megawatt buildings as well.
And clearly, there's plenty to do in Portugal at the Sines campus. But as you mentioned earlier, the memorandum of understanding does refer to other potential expansions. So are there any particular opportunities you see for replicating the integrated energy and data center model elsewhere in Europe? Or as I say, will you have your hands full inside Portugal for the foreseeable future? So that's for another day, if you like.
No, good question. No, the campus is going to keep us very busy. I come from the industry. Been in it. I started in London in 2011 at Digital Realty, in fact. And when those days, we would open 15, 20 megawatt buildings, and that would be a big building. Now, our first building here we call the Nest, which is 33, maybe we'll ramp to 36 megawatts. So building a 200 megawatt building is a task in itself, and we're talking another 4 after Sino 2. So this will keep us busy into the early 2030s. But at the same time, we've already looked and identified potential land in Portugal, a potential expansion. So that's identified. Nothing tangible yet, but we've got the site in our eyes, and we're already speaking with potential customers if they like the look of it. And then to your point on the EDP agreement, that does encapsulate other sites within Iberia that they have that we can look at with them, and also outside Iberia. So as I said, they're very active and have a lot of land and properties in North America. So that is a very busy market, obviously, given AI and data center build out. But the niche we're looking at with what we've been able to achieve in Sines is this AI ready from the ground up facilities. That's what Start Campus will focus on. So wherever we go, we'll look at AI size, maybe not 1 gigawatts everywhere as possible, but you're talking hundreds of megawatt sites. And then we'll have, again, seawater would be great. We can't do that everywhere, but a very tangible renewable angle to the site. Those are our key points of what we want to do as a company.
And maybe just finally, I mean, any thoughts as to the impact you think this partnership might have on Europe's, even globally, the digital and decarbonisation ambitions, in the sense that, do you think you are potentially putting together a blueprint, trailblazing, if you like, that others will copy what you're doing, or because of the sets of circumstances you've got in Portugal, as you mentioned, seawater's not available to everyone, for example, just how unique is what you're doing, and how copyable, replicable do you think it is for others to look at what you're doing and as I say, learn from it?
Yeah, great question. We get a lot of inquiries around the seawater, also from the UK, given the UK's coastline and and power stations. So we get a lot of inquiries, and people are watching. But ignoring that, I think yes, because I think building campuses of this side in any, let's say, country, but let's say any European country, including UK, will need high level, let's call it, engagement as we're having. So you've got to have the national power company working with the provider, developer, and the government, central and local, to just achieve an infrastructure project like this, but also then agree on the renewable requirements of the country. So we like to say, which is the example we try and push on this, is we get a lot of bad press as an industry because power, water, impact on communities. But there's another angle to that. One angle is obviously there's no getting away from the value AI will bring. Of course, there's arguments around it, but let's look at the fundamental. What are the high level AI breakthroughs we could get from the technology? So people want to use it. So we need data centers. But the other piece we always say is these large projects can push governments and policymakers to accelerate renewable projects. I think that's what this example is showing. That, okay, you have a large campus. The decision then is, if you allow it, is it going to pull from your existing energy, or is it going to make the central government and the investment jointly with the developer look at adding more renewable to your grid? That's what I think the test bed, to your point, the case study should be from this for other European countries or any other global countries, is how the developer can work with the national power company, be it private or public, whoever the large energy company is, and central government policymakers to plan for this and hopefully push the country's renewable agenda, because you need to add more. So that should be hopefully at the benefit of the whole country. Not easy, right? You need to balance in terms of investment costs, price of energy for communities, local and central, but that's the angle we like to show from this, and that's what our hope is as well.
Yeah, and bearing in mind, I think last time I read this industry is potentially one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the world. You know, the predicted investments over 1 trillion, I think. So some serious money being. Are you perhaps surprised that other governments, you know, the UK, for example, has announced these AI growth zones, but I'm not sure how much beyond that. Are you surprised that governments haven't realised the advantages that you've just outlined there? You know, whether it's purely the income or it helps grow renewables, etc., and therefore aren't driving it in the same way that clearly the Portuguese government is, or is it a bit more complicated in other areas, regions compared to Portugal? Just I suppose your thoughts as to where others should be, or
Yeah, I think every government now is looking at it, given the transformative nature of AI for an economy. Because I think when we're talking about this sort of infrastructure investment, we need to understand what we're talking about, which is how can you pull the AI ecosystem into your country? This is what people sometimes miss. And I see other people say that, fine, you have a large data campus running models, but those models are owned by, you know, large US, primarily, it could be Chinese, but US tech companies. What's the value to your country? But what they miss is that when you have those types of large workloads and companies land, almost like having a car plant in the old days, or you know, there are car plants still. When a car plant lands, you get the whole supplier base coming around it. Now, it's similar with the AI companies. When they land in your country, you're going to get so many tech spin-offs for the digital economy, and that's going to impact GDP. So I think countries are understanding this. I think it then becomes a central discussion around just what is the power strategy of that country. It becomes fundamental. What is the energy infrastructure? The UK actually is doing a lot. You know, even with the N scale success, I would reiterate. You know, Europe is not generating AI companies, and UK managed to do a massive GPU as a service company with N scale. So I think the UK is definitely positioning itself to be aggressive in this area. But again, it comes back to energy infrastructure. Where do you put them? You know, London is not going to sustain it anymore. So they're looking in the north Midlands and north of the country, because that's where the land and the power will be. So other countries will have the same decision making, I think.
As ever, brilliant to chat to you, and thank you so much for obviously explaining about the partnership and then sharing your thoughts on the data center industry more widely. So great to chat as ever. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Always. Thanks, Philip.